Hello, hello, hello. This is Tooth Be Told. This is Dr. Walter Aka.
Hey, it's Leroy Horton.
And Dr. Gary Dennis.
So anybody that's watched the podcast or listened to the podcast for the past like 5 years knows Dr. Dennis. So we don't need to go into his history. We don't need to. He's a guy. He knows. Everybody knows him. So we're
So
not
so
gonna go
so
to.
where were you born? Tell us from the
Oh,
very
come on.
beginning.
Start from the
Came
beginning.
from heaven.
Start from the 80s and let's go from there. But no, but the reason why we're bringing Dr. Dennis on is because he's done something that's actually pretty unique in dentistry. You've worked with corporate, you've worked in private practice as a specialist, as an endodontist. You've worked in private practice, you've worked in corporations, and you've also worked with Medicaid. And that's the part that we're going to really focus on. But I wanted you to come on so you can give us kind of like what that looks like, working with Medicaid, working in private practice, working with corporate. Like, how do you facilitate all that, and how do you kind of navigate all that to get the best that you possibly can, right? Because in the end, it is a career, it is a job, but we want people that want that opportunity to kind of learn from you. Just like there's so many different varieties of different work. You can work for the government, you can work for armed services, you can, like you said, Medicaid. There's so many places, underserved areas, but you've gotten a chance to kind of dabble in all of them. So we wanted to get your opinion on kind of what you went through. Is that okay?
Sounds good to me.
My man. All right. So I guess the first question is basically, how did you get to this point where you were, kind of working for corporate, you were working in private and also Medicaid? How did you get to that?
Okay. All right. So, um, how I transitioned into Medicaid
Yeah.
was basically because of COVID. So, pre-COVID, I was working strictly corporate dentistry, no Medicaid. And then when COVID hit, company corporation I was working for, they furloughed like 8,000 people. And at the time, I was the regional endodontic clinical director, and they dissolved my position, which is understandable because of layoffs or whatever. But I still worked for them, as an endodontist, but they dissolved my position as clinical director. So they couldn't afford to pay for it anymore. And then at that time, a lot of people's personalities kind of came out, as far as like who was focused on health and access and who was just focused on money. So I personally am focused on health and access.
Okay.
So some of the offices I was working with, I had to end our relationship because they not focused on that. So I ended up having a bunch of free days. So I then actually transitioned into picking up a couple of days at private offices, which is cool, but there was a lot of inconsistencies as far as scheduling. So I kind of got tired of that. And then I just wanted something that was more consistent. So I looked into Medicaid, and there's a vast amount of patients who lack access. So I thought that was perfect. So I actually started working with another corporation, just 4 days, like 4 to 6 days a month, that was providing treatment to Medicaid patients. And that's all I got.
Okay, so what'd you find when you got there? Because I've done some work in community clinics, and I know there's some positives, obviously, of helping people, but there's a lot of drawbacks and difficulties. Can you speak to those?
Yeah, it's not all rainbows and sunshine. That's for sure.
Yeah.
The one positive is that, as far as um, feeling like you're doing something to help people, that's definitely there, because there are tons of patients, and they all need help. Especially, I'm in Houston. There's like maybe two, maybe a little bit more, maybe 2 to 5 endodontists in the whole region actually taking Medicaid patients. Other than that, no one takes Medicaid because drawback is that compensation rates are very low. Um, so when I got to these practices, I saw that their ortho program was great. Like everything kind of was geared toward being successful for ortho, which is cool. But and the oral surgery program is pretty good too, because they're dating patients, so everything needs to be done prior to the patient's arrival. So all of like paperwork and finances and consent and uh, contracting with insurances and all that things. It was pretty smooth. For endo, that was not the case. And I think the company only had one endodontist that they had ever worked with before. That endodontist was seeing like 4 patients per day, and I've seen patients. The real challenge in the beginning was trying to get the offices to adjust the schedule and do little things to ensure patients would show up on time. But that was a challenge that the entire time. That challenge really never got remedied.
Well, okay, let's kind of go back real quick to what you said. So how did you even connect with going into the Medicaid office with that company? Like, did you just call them up and say, hey, are you guys looking for somebody? How did you even get to that point, and what made you go that way versus just, like you said, picking up more private offices if you knew, or did you know that you weren't going to be productive? So that was two-parter right there.
So the private offices like wore me out because of the inconsistencies. Okay. So like one day I go there and schedule's full and we're being very productive. And the next day I show up and like only one patient shows up. And the offices didn't really seem to care or like have accountability for these patients not showing up. And it like I'm not a person that can live on inconsistencies. I like things to be consistent and in order. I mean, I'm an endodontist. I do the same thing every day, all day. Right. You know what I mean? So that's just my type of personality. So that wore me out. And then I was just looking for something that was going to be consistent. And I don't remember exactly how we got connected.
Right.
I think I might have just went online and pretty sure that's what it is. I just went online and looked for endodontic positions, and I saw that one, and I called them up, and I was like, "Hey, I got a couple of days. If want somebody to come in?" And they were like, "Sure."
Okay. Do you think that like private practice doctors are kind of naive to think that they can do what corporate does, which is bring in specialists into the office and actually maintain that specialist? Do you think that's kind of something that they wish they could do, but not all of them can actually do?
I think they're very, very naive in that. And then, I mean, even on the corporate side, because so let's say a corporate entity gives certain dentists either to be the lead dentist in that office or a owner doctor in that office. And then those dentists will see the schedule and let's say, okay, we have a full day today. Then they're like, oh, well, can we add another day? It's like, just because the schedule is full today does not mean the schedule is going to be full tomorrow.
Right. And you're going to be consistent.
Exactly. So I'm like, you have to have a trend of consistency for you to know that you actually have a patient pool to add another day. Like, we're not adding another. If I have 9 appointments, we're not adding another day just because you got 3 more referrals. That's not right. It doesn't work. Okay. And then like, can you do it next month? Can you do it the month after that? So trends, like I think some of these dentists are not really looking at like logistics and the trends. Like, you have to have a trend to know that you can support it. And I don't know, did I answer your question?
Yeah, you actually did. Yeah, it almost seems like people just aren't able to look at their actual patient pool and realize that, yeah, I can actually sustain somebody on a productive basis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think they do it one time, but they do it all the time.
Right.
It's not,
And
that's not reality.
and that's a double-edged sword, you know, because having been a practice owner that has tried to bring in specialists, if you don't have the availability, you can't build a schedule. So it's just always this fine balance of like, all right, hey, for the first couple months, some of these extra days might be hit or miss, but it takes time to build. It's just like when you open an office and you go from 3 days a week to 4 days a week to 5 days a week. There's a lag period where that fourth or that extra day, like you're really not making money. But you know, when people call, when people are making appointments, when you start having that availability, it eventually will fill up. But people don't always have the time, understandably, to wait 6 months, wasting a whole day or 2 days, not making any income, because that's not fair to, you know, obviously to a specialist.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
What's the
So,
next question?
oh yeah, so I was gonna ask, you mentioned uh you know, general offices, and one thing that what's kept me successful doing surgery in offices is the offices that were okay with the general dentist not doing any surgery. So I do everything from the simple surgery to the more complex perio surgery. And as the simple ones come through my hands, I'm able to upsell, inform them, educate them on the next level. When you had dentists, are they only giving you the hard root canals, or are they giving you all the root canals to keep you busy?
So are you talking about in a private
Yeah.
general dentist office? Okay. So they're not giving all of them. They're not. And a lot of them are ones they started and could not finish. The ones that they say like, oh yeah, I started that, and then I take an X-ray and there's a file. And I'm like, could have just told me before I even, it was prepared me, not a surprise. I mean, you're in the office, you know? And then other times, like what really annoyed me is they would think endo day was endo day for everybody, not just me.
Right.
So I get there and they're doing root canals right beside me. And then have the audacity to come and ask me about their root canal. Like, oh, can you come take a look at? I'm like, it's not GPR.
Right.
Like, I'm not here to teach you how to do a root canal. I'm here to do root canal. So that's a little frustrating as well.
Yeah. What's your conversation look like? I mean, obviously we're going to segue into what you're doing now, but at the time when you do set up a relationship with a GP office, has your conversation evolved? You know, have you kind of sifted through all the BS and now you're just like, hey, if we're going to do this, this is what I need, X, Y, and Z, or do you still approach with the niceties of, trying to foster a relationship?
So say a little bit of both. Because especially like it's a new practice, you really don't know the individual's personalities that well. They don't really know mine. So it's kind of more of like a baby step kind of approach. But then also I let them know in the beginning, like these are the things that I can do, these are the things that I can't do, based off of the equipment that you have available in the office.
Right.
So like, don't put this tooth that has a bunch of separated files and a post in it on my schedule, because I mean I can do the treatment, but it's going to take forever. Like logistically, I like to do hour appointments because I don't want to have a patient sitting there with their mouth open longer than like 45 minutes. So like don't put a case that's going to take me 2 hours to do schedule. Like that's needs to be sent out to a private practice, private practice. So I tell them that stuff up front. But then, the question is like, well, what do you want me to do, like with the tooth before you get there? Say the patient's in pain, like, can I open it up and whatever? And I say, hey, whatever you feel comfortable doing, do it. But if you're not comfortable doing something, not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not your safety bag.
So So I'm gonna kind of transition into basically breaking down the whole Medicaid story for you, okay? And we're gonna start with one thing that a lot of dentists do when they buy a new office, whatever, is they buy all the brand new toys and put it in the office, and then they sit and wait and they pray, right? We pray that we're gonna have the patients that we're gonna use all these nice toys on, right? Medicaid, I feel like, cannot do that because they're limited by budget or whatever it may be, right? Because they're very budget conscious. So can you explain to us what that looked like in a day for you when you went to an office? Did you have all the tools that you needed? Because you brought that up, right? Did you have, mobile x-ray units? Did you have a room that had an x-ray unit in there so you didn't have to transport the patient? Because you take a lot of x-rays. So can you show us like what the day looked like for you when you stepped into an office and you got the rooms and you're setting up?
All right. So before I get into that, I do want to preface all of this with my Medicaid story, not necessarily have a happy ending. So,
all right, that's okay. That's okay.
I mean, I need to preface that because like
right.
things I say are going to be, related to my experience.
Right, and this is all just your experience. Yeah, we know that part. Yeah.
And Thursday was the last day
Okay.
I ever want to work Medicaid again.
Okay.
Oh, like this recently, this last Thursday.
I put in my notice a month and a half ago,
right.
and yesterday or Thursday was my last day.
Yeah.
See. Okay, this is a fresh wound.
we
need some trauma therapy today.
it wasn't like it's like it's no hard feelings or anything like that. It's just they burned me out. Like
that's what we're gonna transition into. Yeah. So
I
you've kind of told the story. You've told the end of the story. Now let's get back to the beginning of the story, so we can, kind of get. So now we already know what the end story looks like, but it's okay. Let's
spoiler alert.
And like I already know, like there's tons of patients. Right?
Okay, good. In a day, how many were you probably seeing in a day?
Probably on average about 12 to 13.
And normally you see about 8.
Yeah, 8 to 9.
Okay.
But some days I saw like 15, 17. Like there's tons of patients. But so I get there and I'm thinking that it's gonna be similar to what I'm used to. I usually work out of 2 rooms. There's x-ray availability in both the operatories. That was not the case. They have 1 room with the x-ray head in it. And then there's tons of computers in the office, but some rooms have 2 computers in them. Some rooms have no computers in them. Sometimes the operatory with the x-ray head in it doesn't have a computer. So I have to use a laptop. Like I was like, I don't know who designed this. This is the most absurd setup I've ever seen. Like, why wouldn't you have 1 computer in 1 room? I don't know why there's 2 in this one. There's not 1 in that one. The room without the computer, like it's completely useless. I can understand how ortho, again, I think everything was designed for ortho. So I can see how ortho could use that, but like anybody else, like that needs to like look at an x-ray, this is not gonna work. So I'm limited to working out of 1 treatment room. All right.
But you have 15 patients.
Yeah, 1 treatment room, 15. I'm like, so clearly all these people aren't gonna get treated. A lot of these are just gonna get incontinence. I'm like, logistically, this can't work.
Right.
So there's that. And then I'm used to doing hour appointments. But the way that I usually work, when I get there, the stuff's already treatment plan. And this is not in the Medicaid office, the other offices. Stuff is already treatment plan. It's already the financial arrangement has already been done. All the insurance things are not contracting, all that stuff is already done. So when I get there, I can do my consult and then do the treatment. We can start the treatment. Everything's already done from the front desk standpoint. Medicaid office is not like that. And also, out of those 12 patients that I'm seeing, probably only 5 are actually from that office. Everybody else is from somewhere else.
Mm.
And they're there because I'm the only person that takes their insurance. Some people drove 2 hours, 3 hours to get there, right? And then some of those people that drove 2 or 3 hours don't have a referral. So now we got now your appointment was at 10. We don't even have the referral. So I don't even know like what tooth I'm supposed to even be looking at. So now we got to call that office, get the referral.
So I'm very confused right now because you said you started off by saying, you know what, with OS, they prepped everything ahead of time. But why didn't they do this?
Exactly. Exactly. Why wouldn't you do it?
Right.
Yeah.
Because that part's the same, right? I mean, or similar enough. It's insurance work, it's scheduling, it's having referrals, paperwork. Like that's 90% overlapping on the Venn diagram. What's the problem?
If you want to get to success, you do that.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. So, you know, after the first couple days working there, I brought that up. You know, this could be a lot more efficient. These things were done. And they're like, yeah, but like all these patients are not from this office. So like we have to depend on patient in that other office to get us the stuff. So basically they're like, we don't have the manpower. It's basically more or less that's what they're saying, you know? So I was like, okay, fine, whatever. So the schedule now, it's really a schedule. It's like a outline of it could or could not happen.
Hopes and dreams.
You know, yeah. Right. And then what I started noticing is they would, and I guess it's a corporate thing to make it look like people are doing a job, but they would leave the patients who are not confirmed on the schedule and then just start double booking, triple booking, quadruple booking that appointment. And but like, what happens when all 4 of those people show up?
Right.
You know, so so that would happen a lot. So it was like the front just didn't. There was a lack of organization, and that kind of took a toll on me as far as like being able to work, because sometimes I was sitting there for 2 hours and nobody shows up. Other times, 2 hour time span, there's 8 patients. So like it's a real mental game.
But Gary, okay, you're a specialist, right? You're a doctor, and this is for the people that are listening. You telling me as a doctor, you don't have the power to affect how your patient flow goes? I think because a lot of people assume that you have all this power just because you're a doctor.
So I'm gonna say yes and no. No, in the fact that I have no control over the schedule. I can give suggestions on how to make the scheduling more efficient, but the people at the front have to follow the suggestions. So like the saying is, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Right.
You know, they gotta want to feed in to my system, the system be effective. They're not gonna feed into the system, then you know, we got the defense at Colorado, and we're losing games.
Right.
Coach Prime,
Okay.
you know, Coach Prime can't shine if the defense doesn't feed into the system.
Okay. Well, so here's a question. So did they send you your schedule ahead of time? Because maybe you could have prevented a lot of this.
No, and so yes, but then that means I'm doing a whole lot of work when I'm not in the office.
Right.
And the whole, like, if I wanted to do that, I would just open my own office. Right.
Yeah.
The reason I do this is so I don't have to do that.
Right.
I'm like, just follow this. It's plug and play. Just follow the system.
So you give them a template of your schedule.
Yes.
And all they have to do is just put the patients in that template.
Plug them in.
But for some reason, they weren't listening or doing that at all.
I mean, I think maybe in 3 years, maybe 4 times, actually followed my system. You know, and we had $10,000 days. You know, But every other time,
And for everybody listening in Medicaid world, that's a ton.
It's a lot.
no, and
You
especially
know,
the very end of like these
That's
yeah,
fees are low, like, you know.
yeah.
But if you follow the system, you can win, you know. But you know, they didn't. I guess they didn't. For like, you're not Andy Reid, no.
But
You know, but that's a good point because you're an employee, right? And
So I don't. So I've never been a W-2 in my life.
oh, okay, then we're not going to get in the weeds of W-2
Okay,
versus
okay,
10-9, but you're not an owner. When you
correct.
have your own practice, you have the power to say, hey, if you don't do my program, you can be gone.
Exactly.
and
I'm an associate.
he'll be in the office more consistently to see what the schedule looks like,
Right.
Yes.
right? So that
Right.
he's dependent on them to kind of do his scheme or template so that when he comes in,
Right.
it's exactly the way he expects it.
It can be efficient.
Yeah.
And so
And
you weren't getting
that
that.
can be frustrating.
Oh man, no, not at all. Like,
Let's talk about patience. Let's talk about so people think that oh, Medicare patients are tough to deal with because they're inconsistent and stuff like that. But I could say the same thing about any other patient. There are other people that don't show up. It's not like it's just a Medicaid situation where there's no shows or no confirmation or anything like that at all, right? So what did you notice between like corporate, private, and Medicare when it came to patients overall?
okay. But what I noticed is that, I mean, yeah, some patients don't show up, but a lot of times the people that don't confirm, they show up. Like, those patients showed up.
Hmm.
You
In the
know,
Medicaid office.
yes, they showed up. I mean, again, sometimes it didn't show up. Like, someone that confirmed didn't show up. But the three people that didn't confirm, all of them showed up. You know, so like, there's patients. There's a lot of patients. They're gonna be there, but like, for a an office that doesn't take med, right? The One of my things is making sure the patient shows up. How you do that, in my opinion, is you make them pay a deposit to get on the schedule, knowing that, I'm only going to be there once or twice a month, so these appointments are going to should hopefully get filled up pretty quickly. So we want you to make sure that you show up for your appointment. So let's get a deposit for you to get the appointment. Usually people who pay money, get an appointment, will show up for the appointment. Usually.
Yeah. They got some skin in the game.
Right.
Yeah. But I also noticed that people who pay in full sometimes don't show up.
Right.
Which is really bizarre, but I guess it's a different feeling. Like, if you paid in full, like, you can show up whenever you want. You know,
My money's there no matter what.
Yeah.
No, so I think that was the mindset. But for the Medicaid, you cannot charge these people money,
Right.
because most of the time they're not even paying to get on an appointment. So that, I don't even know how to even navigate that. I guess their solution was double book the appointment, triple book the appointment. That's their solution. But it's not an efficient.
So do you think that people that don't pay, the Medicaid patients, kind of take it for granted? Like, well, I'm not paying for anything. It's like, whenever you give free stuff away, people expect less. Like, oh, I don't care about this then.
I don't think that's it.
Okay.
I think it's more of, these patients are, getting services off of government programs. So that means that they're already probably either disabled or low income.
Mhm.
They might be working 2 or 3 jobs. They probably just don't have the time, to do what is requested in their schedule. So they
Like
probably like, oh, I
take
forgot
days
to.
off, take days off
Yeah.
of work, stuff like that.
Yeah, so like, it's a struggle for them to even do that. So, now I'm like, we need you to confirm 24 hours for your appointment. They're probably not even thinking about it. Probably just like, oh, I have an appointment that day. I need to do whatever I need to do for work to be able to get there. Or it's, You know, maybe it's not them, maybe it's their child. You know, like I gotta take off of work. I gotta get with the school, let them know that. So like they're just probably not even thinking about like, oh, I forgot to confirm. I
Okay.
mean, that's what I mean. You know, that's how I'm.
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, you
No.
saw the insight. You know, you kind of had conversations with people, and I'm sure that's because that's what I kind of thought too. It's like not everybody has that opportunity to say, "Oh, I'm going to go and pay for child support or to pay for someone to watch my kid," or I'm not going to be able to just take a day off because that's money that I'm losing. And I don't think people think that way. They just think, "Oh, this person doesn't really appreciate what they're getting from the government or whatever it may be." You know, so.
Right.
Also, I would like to say that you know, the I find that the American perception of Medicaid patients is, Black History Month is coming up. I mean, majority of people, in my opinion, think that like, oh, all these Black people are on Medicaid and they're freeloaders, and that's just not the case. The vast majority of patients that I saw in that 3-year time span, white patients, and then
Well,
next were Hispanic, and then I saw some Black people. So like that's just really not the case. I know if you go and look up like the racial demographics of who's taking Medicaid, Native Americans are the #1 group that is allotted majority of the funds for Medicaid, and 29% are actually white. So
they make up the largest group individually within that. It's just they get on us because we may be proportionally higher than our percentage of the population, but it's still they are the largest group. You know?
So I just wanted to throw that
Well,
out there.
that's actually well. Okay, here's a question: do you think that a lot of doctors, a lot of dentists, have a negative perception of Medicaid patients, and the whole system because they don't pay well, or because they just don't want to deal with those patients or situation with dealing with government, whatever it may be? What do you think is the reason why more people are not doing Medicaid help, specialists and GPs?
I mean, there's definitely a negative perception of these patients, but I mean, the vast majority of the patients that I saw were very, very thankful that I was there to provide the service for them. Like, extremely thankful, because they're like, no one can take my insurance. I've waited 2 months to get this appointment, and I'm in pain. Like, they were all extremely thankful. But again, the compensation rate is extremely low. So I think that is part of the negativity that is associated with the patients.
Give us an example of some numbers on that so people can
Please.
understand.
So, well,
compare private to Medicaid number wise.
Okay, so it also depends on the location when you're talking about
right,
private and the the patient pool. But so I'll just compare like one specific office that was a private general dentist office that I worked at that was in Carolina. All right, so my fee for a molar root canal was $1,800. Right, but I also did the build-up, so that the consult, the root canal treatment, and the buildup are all included in that $1,800.
Okay.
Right. Now, Medicaid was probably, I mean, also, which I found out is that there's a bunch of different Medicaid plans. It's not just like one plan, and each plan has different prices.
Right.
But I'd say probably on average, the molar was probably around $550, $600.
Wow.
The buildup was probably maybe $40, and then the consult might be $20.
Right.
So you went from $1,800 to about $650.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then again, I'm an associate. I'm working on a percentage.
Right.
So I'm only getting a percentage
percentage.
of that.
Yeah.
You know,
And
like
yeah.
so here's the thing about like with Medicaid. I feel like if I own the office, I feel like I could make it very productive because there's such a vast patient pool. But I'd be taking 100% of the fee minus my overhead, right? As an associate, you're just getting the percentage, which is you're getting the lower end of the percentage.
Mhm.
You know, so the compensation is not favorable. But that said, I knew that going in to Medicaid. I already knew that the fees were going to be low.
So then,
But
so I guess I'm kind of confused. So then, what drove you away? If you knew that the fee was going to be low, so you knew that already, right? So you subtract that out of the equation. What actually said I'm done? Like because you already knew you weren't going to get paid a lot.
the whole reason I did it was because I wanted to provide access to patients. Like you know, I'm only doing 4 to 6 days a month. My other days, I'm making a lot of money. Oh, also on that, I wanted to say, Endo is not dead. Endo is not dying.
Oh, we can have another
You are-
conversation about that. You're not here for that, but I do believe it is dying. But that's another subject.
All right.
We need to have we can have a conversation about that because I
So-
really think that a lot of
so-
specialties are dying. I really believe
Endo
that.
is not one of them.
Just
Endo
based
is
on,
not one of them.
I'm just saying. We'll get on to that. We'll get on to that. But go ahead.
That's another.
We'll get on. We'll bring you
conversation
back for that one. We'll have a
Right.
conversation.
But I already knew that. Like I would really just was like, hey, you know, I've been working for at the time when it was I've been working for 10 years.
Right.
You know, and I don't really have hardly any bills. So I was like, hey, I got these days. Let me go and actually do something to like really help people and you know feel good about what I'm doing. So that's why I went into it. It was more of like I just want to do something that's going to be more spiritually rewarding than just monetary. So, but it to answer your question, like they burned me out. You know, it wasn't the money, it was the lack of organization.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
so I got to follow up then because I'm still trying to kind of piece this together. Somebody would sit there and go, okay, so if it wasn't the monetary aspect, why didn't you just go to like Catholic charities or any other place and just volunteer your time? Right? Then you won't have to be upset about, you know, because you could say, hey, because I did that, right? I volunteered before and they tell you how many people do you want to see in a day, and then they put on like, you know, I don't know, 5, 10 or whatever it may be, and it's more relaxed environment. People are still very grateful for your work, so why didn't you just volunteer your time?
So you did it for free.
Yep.
So here's why. Because I'm doing work, and I'm just not the type of person. I'm not going to work free. You know, that to me that's called slavery.
But then you get more spiritual. You get more spiritual enlightenment if you just do it for free. Like you're still giving your God-given craft, right?
So who was paying your malpractice insurance?
I mean, I still was.
Okay, so
that's the whole point.
You're not working for free. You're paying to work.
Okay, yes. But again, I felt spiritually enlightened, if you want to put it that way. But
so,
Walt, how regularly were you doing this?
I was doing it once a week, so 4 times a month.
Really? That's a lot, brother.
Yeah, I know.
You were volunteering 4 days a month?
Yes. And then when my kid was born, then I just I switched to volunteer my time at swim classes and stuff like that. So
Okay.
I'm still paying. I'm still paying to work.
Because it sounds like you were running from something.
No.
He's trying to run to you know,
try to get to the pearly gates.
Like...
but you know what I will say? But you know what I will say though? That was also after I paid my student loan off. So I was just, you know, I was just kind of like, okay, my student loan's paid off, right? I like you said, when you work with different companies or whatever it may be, you get paid well enough. So after a while, you kind of sit there and say, well, how much money do you really need, right? And then the days that I was off, I said, okay, let me go. And it was, I'll be honest with you, just like whenever I go to like when I do a mission trip, that kind of rejuvenates you to deal with all the BS that you deal with when people pay you. You know what I mean? So for me, it was more of like a rejuvenation situation. And it wasn't that hard. It was literally like I would see maybe 6-7 patients in that day when I'm used to seeing double that, if not triple. You see what I mean? So the stress level was not there. And I thought that people were more grateful when you just came and said, hey, I'm going to give you my service for free. Or me paying to go give the service. You see what I'm saying? And so that was kind of why, I mean, if anybody says, oh, okay, you know, Dr. Dennis, you were talking about, hey, this is fulfilling for me, then why don't you just do it for free?
So, I mean, that is something that I could have done or looked into,
Right.
but just not what I chose.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, no one's, you know, attacking you. I'm just saying that that's another thing that someone might think of and say, well, why didn't you just do it for free?
I mean, yeah, I guess I could have done that. But
Well,
again,
was it more the money, or was it, as you said, the disorganization, the lack of structure that burned you out?
it's a lack of structure. Like the money, like again, like I don't the
Yeah.
money, like because I mean, oh man, there's one insurance. It wasn't a Medicaid insurance. It was a DMO, and the premolar root canal is $80. $80. Like, and you know, I would get those.
Your instruments to do the procedure is probably how much? Like 100.
Oh, it costs way more.
Yo, that's
Like,
them
so
telling
like,
you, I could not pay you, but I'm just trying to flex on you, so here's $80. I could technically just not pay you, though.
So technically, you actually paid to do that work.
I yes.
So you did volunteer.
Which is okay. So they overbook you, they underpay you or under reimburse you. I'll put it that way. And then as far as equipment, because you already described the facilities, how about your equipment? Did you have to bring your own equipment? Did they have microscopes? How did that look?
So the draw was that I did get a daily minimum show up, and I didn't have to bring anything. They had supplied all the equipment except for like I had to bring my loops, and I had to bring my heated plugger and backfill because they didn't have that. Those are really and I had to bring some offices. I had to bring my own
Your own what?
face shield.
Okay.
But that was it. That's like I could just more or less just show up.
Okay.
And then what they did was they gave me they have like a website that they use to order supplies, and they just gave me a code, and they were like, order whatever you need off of that, and they pay for it. Granted, sometimes they're like, do you really need this? Do you really need that? but more or less, they gave me everything that was pretty sufficient for me to provide the service.
I just need a gentle wave unit real quick. I'm just gonna order that.
Yeah. Oh, and what's crazy too is that each office only had one endo motor, like the ProMark. But just one. So if sometimes the general dentist might be doing a root canal also. There's only one motor, so then they weren't doing the root canal. Yeah,
so okay, so we gotta always find positives in something, right? And the positive is they provided you with as much as they could.
Correct.
Right. So that's a positive.
So I could just show up and do my thing.
What about assistants? How well were they trained? Did they give you assistants that were qualified or were capable? And how did you see that whole dynamic with your assistants?
So when I was going through the interview process, they asked me if I had and I did. I had two. And so what they did was I asked both my assistants, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go work with these people 4 days a month. Do you want to come work with me? They both said sure. So the company hired them. So the company paid their wages or whatever. But I already had two assistants that work with me, so they know the system, so we could, get in there and just kind of rock and roll. But after about, I think it was the second year, one of my assistants, um, she quit, and she was going back to school to do like early childhood development.
Mm.
So I was like, oh, that's great. So now I'm down to one assistant. They would provide a second assistant, but it was never. It was probably like 4 or 5 different people show up, random. Not I don't say randomly, but like it was not consistently the same person.
Mhm.
But there was a group of people. It seemed to be out of those 5 people, one of them would come, and I think 2 of them we trained. Seemed like they were coming more often. We trained to work chairside with me. The other ones, um, you know, weren't. I wasn't going to waste my time training them. So basically, we would just have them do X-rays for the consults, and then my other assistant was looking. She would always do work chairside with
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, is that, do you feel like you were doing compromised work? And not to put it out there that you weren't doing good work, but obviously when you have a good system, when you got supplies, when you have good assistance, you could do your best work. Was part of your frustration that, listen, I'm trying to, I'm trying to do really good quality work on these people that need it, and you guys are not helping me? Was it
Mm.
that type of frustration?
No, I I do high quality work all the time.
Mhm.
So that was not. And again, they basically provided me with everything I needed. I mean, I had to um, use different file systems that I normally use, but um, again, I'm an endodontist practicing for years, so I can use any file system. I just have to see the files and adjust it to work the way that I work.
Hmm.
So that, I mean, you know, I'm still
Well,
rocking out amazing cases.
well, so I think people will listen to this and go, well, okay, how could you say you worked 1 hour, every hour you saw one patient, right? And now you're seeing 2, 3, possibly 4 in that hour. How could the quality of work still be the same? Or did you have to give up on not seeing those patients? Does that make sense? So
So,
how do you equate for that?
so um, this goes back to the control thing. So um, the front desk controls who gets put on the schedule, but I control who I'm seeing and
Mm-hmm.
how long I'm seeing them and when I'm going to see them. So for me, once I start treatment, I don't leave that room until I finish.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have 3 people there, 2 are consults, 1 is treatment, and they're all there at 10 a.m., what I tell them is, our the assistants, I was like, let's get the 2, or let's do the consults and everybody first, right? Then it's gonna, for the treatment, now they have to contract all that stuff. That's gonna take another 20 minutes while we're waiting. While we're waiting, we can do the 2 consults on the other 2 people. Then start the treatment. When we start the treatment, we're not seeing anybody for 35, 40 minutes while I do that treatment. Once that's completed, then we can go do the consults. Now, what happened a lot is we had that other second assistant. They don't really know the system. So I'm halfway through a treatment and they're like, oh, there's a consult in room 6 and in room 7. And I'm like, I'm in treatment. They got to wait. So now they have to wait till I finish that treatment. Then I go to those consults, and now it's 11 o'clock, and there's 3 more patients. So then I do those consults, and now we're 30 minutes behind. Then it happens again.
Hmm.
Hour later, now we're an hour behind. It happens again. Now we're an hour and a half behind. So that is what takes a toll. Because like I like to be on time,
Right.
and but like the way the system is, we're never going to be on time. And I even got to a point where if I saw a patient later in the day, like say it's like 3 o'clock, and they're like, "Well, somebody need the treatment. Are we gonna do the treatment today?" And I'm like, "No, we don't have the time to do it because I have these other treatments I have to do. Uh, so you're gonna have to reschedule for the treatment. But I would advise you come in the morning. First appointment is 9 a.m. Be the 9 a.m. patient, or be the 9 a.m. patient, because if you're not, you're going to be waiting.
You're waiting.
So like,
yeah, and that's part of service, right? And I think there's obviously the quality of cases part, which you've addressed, but part of your general service is, in my mind anyway, I don't like the notion under my name, people coming and having to wait an hour outside before they even get seated. Then it's another 20 minutes before I get to them. Like, you want your reputation, your kind of full package of service to include, hey, if I took off the morning and I got to get back to work, I can predictably come, get this consult, get out, go back and do my job, right? And I could definitely see where that would take a toll on you.
I will say this though, a lot of the patients were very accommodating, and the way the offices are, most of them, it's like they're open operatories with like 2 walls, so like which I personally am a little confused about as far as like HIPAA shit, but if you turn around, you can see patient on the behind you, because there's only
There's
2
privacy
walls,
walls.
not 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The only room that had a door was the treatment room. So like the patients can see me running around, like going from here, going from there, going from there. And a lot of patients commented like, "Man, you're really working hard." See you running around home.
So they know you're not just drinking coffee in the back.
Exactly. I'm not playing video games on my phone.
Right.
Like they can physically see that I'm working. I'm trying to see everybody. So that was one positive, is that patients were accommodating.
Yeah.
But granted, there were some that were like, I'm gonna wait in 2 hours, and I'm like, and I'm working since 9 a.m.
That always has surprised me, the whole privacy and HIPAA, because even in residency where it's like very open operatories and you're going over, patients' CD4 count, viral load, their medication list, are you still taking the Cialis? And then people right next to you can hear that. And so I always try to just get very close to the patient when I'm doing health histories and just kind of talk like this, because I wouldn't want my business out there.
Exactly. And then you can hear say there's, I don't know, the hygienist is working on a patient.
Right.
You can hear their whole conversation.
Yep.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, God. And the patient's talking some crazy stuff, and you're like, right.
See, that's when I turn my music up a little louder. I'm like, okay.
Oh my God. There was this one time, this guy was talking about his man trips to I think it was Thailand or something.
Oh Jesus, I know where this is going.
Right. I was in treatment on a woman, treating a woman, and I actually had to stop and go over there. And I was like, look, man, everybody can hear you.
Right.
And who was he telling this to?
I don't know if he was on the phone. I think he was on the phone.
Okay.
Like talking he was super loud. I was like, oh my God.
Because I was gonna say, if it was a hygienist, more than likely they were also a female. So
oh man, I was in on Thursday, the hygienist, there's this old guy, and the hygienist walked in. He started talking to her. He was like, "Are you married?" And I'm just like, "I know it." And he's like, "Cause you look good. Like you could be married." It's like, "I know I could be married." And it made me think about like, man, like to be a woman in this industry, like the type of nonsense
that you have to deal with,
put up with. Like I was like, God, that's tough. That is so tough.
It is. Let me ask you something, man. So the story that you're telling is a very common story for a lot of us that have worked in Medicaid or DSHS offices. So there's got to be some common threads. Why is it that there seems to be such a lack of organization, lack of structure that burns out a lot of good-meaning, well-intentioned providers Because it does not seem that hard, and we do this in private practice all the time. But I've worked in, early on in my career and kind of throughout speckled in there, and it just seems to be this common theme of if it's a predominantly Medicaid or Medicare office, or the VA for that instance, I'm experiencing that now. There's just a lot of chaos.
So, again, I can only speak from my own experience, but I noticed there was a ton of turnover in front.
Mhm.
All right. And there's not, when there's that turnover, it's like rapid, there's not a continuity of training from one person to the next. They're kind of just thrown in there. So then it's like and we've all experienced this, like you're saying the same thing over and over to the front because there's always a new person.
Right.
So I think a lot of that has to do with the turnover in the front. I feel like if you had, someone who had been working in the front in the same office for, I don't know, 3 years, that there would probably be a lot more organization.
Right.
And that, but it
And
just,
do you think that's a pay issue, or what do you think's
um,
driving that?
so, I mean, it could be. I know,
Mhm.
like one office I went to, oh my God, I think it had 5 managers um,
Oh, Jesus.
during the time I went there. And um, like, I mean, I had a patient say to me, I've seen you more than seeing the same people at the front desk.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I only come here once a month. Like, I'm doing root canals. Like, like that's
Right.
insane.
Right.
So I think it might be a pay issue. Like it might be um a issue of making it could be a lateral move in their career, or it could
Mhm.
be, maybe this office is gonna pay me $2 more an hour.
Right.
So I'm gonna go over there. Um
Because the reason I asked that, I was trying to lead into, we've got low reimbursements from Medicaid. At what, for you, okay, as a personal, I guess, decision, at what pay would this stress and this burnout have been a fair compensation to where you said, all right, you know what? This is kind of crazy. Feel like I'm burning out, but they pay me pretty good. Because right now we're also looking at the turnover of the endodontics provider as well as the front office staff. So do you think that there would be a price point at which you could have put up with that a lot longer, and maybe that's what's also affecting the other positions in this office?
um so I'm gonna say yes, but in that, everybody's number is different. So like when I go to work, I'm pretty much expecting that I'm going to take home this amount every day, right? So if they had compensated me where I was taking home the same amount I would have in the other office, then I mean, yeah, I probably would have put up with it more, or I'm not going to put it on myself. I probably would have um, dug deeper into trying to get the front organized,
Mm.
because at some point, like I know I'm gonna get paid if I show up, if I see one patient or if I see 15 patients, right?
Right.
I'm might not be the same amount, but I'm gonna get paid regardless. And I'm tired of having to tell the same thing over and over and over to the front. So you kind of just give up on it. And just like I'm just gonna ride the wave back here and what happens, happens. Like there were times where I was like, we're not even gonna follow the schedule.
Right.
The first patient that comes, they want to do the treatment, we're gonna do the treatment. Next patient that comes that we see, they want to do the treatment, we're gonna do,
Yeah.
So you kind of like, you get tired of having to say the same thing over and over. And then
Yeah.
yeah.
And
So
I've
I
seen
think
that.
that's burnout.
It is, and I've seen that even. The reason I thought of that is at the VA. there's this common expression of like, well, it's the VA. They don't pay me enough to fix that problem. Right. So it's like, even if you are motivated, you have drive, when you're in an institution that's not the top down culture is efficiency and, patient outcomes. At one point you just give up. You go, all right, I can only give so much to this job, especially at this price point.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But just listening to that, and again, I'll play the devil's advocate, but just listening to that, it almost seems like the only person that ends up suffering is the person that could not afford to get other medication or other insurance, right? So the Medicaid patient seems to be the end result, the only person that seems to suffer, because you yourself, you said it, right? Hey, I'm done with this. I'm moving on somewhere else. The front office, I'm done with this. I'm moving on. But the only person that has to stay is the Medicaid patient. Now, how right is that?
I mean, I completely agree with you. I mean, I think that's probably why I stayed doing it as long as I did. Like these people need help, but you can't put your own health,
yeah,
mental health at risk to help someone else. Like if you're not good, you're not in a state to help other people.
Right. So we'll sum it up. We'll ask you to kind of sum up, what you could possibly do in this situation and what you learned in this situation to kind of either better it, and also just kind of what you learned overall to give to the next generation that might want to think about doing the same thing.
I'd say if you really want to do it, I don't think you can do it part-time. I think you got to do it full time. So then you're like fully invested in a way to make it organized and productive. Because if you're doing it part time, you're really not putting all of your energy into trying to make it productive and organized. Because you're like, I'm like $3 a month, but it's definitely there's tons of patients and they need help, so they're there. Like if you ever are in a situation where you're like, I'm not seeing enough patients, they got some over there. They have the patients. But yeah, I'd say you need to be fully invested. Because if you're not, then you're not going to. It's not going to last that long. You're going to get tired. Does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah, it actually, it really sums up everything. I mean, in the end, I guess we can only do but so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Your mental health is first.
There you go. It sounds like Dr. Horton. I don't know. We can't hear the mic. Yeah, we lost his mic. All right. Well, what we'll do is we'll just assume that he had the same kind of brilliant question that I had, and that and you answered it so eloquently for both of us. But honestly, Dr. Dennis, we know how busy you are. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the episode. Once again, and I do want to have a discussion with everybody, all the specialists, about if we believe specialty is dying, because I truly believe that. I truly believe that specialty is dying, and we'll bring you on to talk about that. I know that's a trigger point for you. I get it, but that's the point. So we'll talk about that next year. We'll bring you back on, and we'll
it's not dying.
Okay, all right. We'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about your love for Porsche and your hatred for Tesla. All right. Hey, thank you, gentlemen. Yeah, man. We'll talk soon. All right. Take care, guys. Thank you for listening to this episode of Truth Be Told. The opinions on this episode are just that, our opinions. Please consult your dental professional before taking any action with your dental health. If you have any questions about anything you heard on this episode, please contact us at Real Dentist with an S. That's REAL Dentist with an S at gmail.com. We will be very happy to return any message that we receive, because we love the communication that we have with our listeners.